We're back for another one of your questions about work. And if you're new, I'm Roy, and together with Min, we are both startup investors in the future of work at Bloomberg Beta. What are we talking about today?
Great. We've got one that probably all career job seekers have asked themselves at some point. And so, does rejecting an offer close that door forever? Am I screwed?
Great question. It is. This goes in the chapter of the book titled "It Depends." And what does it depend on? So plenty of times a company has, I'm going to just take one version of this, which is a company making you a job offer, which is, I assume what the context is. Did you mean that context, Min?
Yeah. Let's say you were looking for a job, and then you were in the privileged position of having potentially multiple offers, or even just one that you're really excited about, but you're not totally sure yet, right?
Yeah. But I think the principle applies, which is, when does it close the door forever? It closes the door forever if you've been dishonest during the process and then just burn the bridge, which is that they just learned that based on how you turn them down, that they don't want to work with you. It closes the door based on the proximity to that offer. And here's what I mean by that. If you said no, you probably can't come back 2 weeks later and say, how about me? Unless, something that you can explain changed. But if it's a big company and it's a different hiring manager for a different role a few years later at a different point in your career, then it's almost like a totally separate interview. And lots of big companies hire people who have turned them down for many roles. And even if it's the same person, sometimes that person is just chasing you, and they'll just ask you again and again and again. So a lot of it depends on the context. You are not screwed forever unless the way you handle yourself is dishonest. And I think that can happen in the form of leading them on, of implying that you're definitely going to work there, asking them to expend lots of internal capital on your behalf. So for example, if somebody extends you an offer and you say, well, I'd really like to talk to the CEO, and they stretch to introduce you to the CEO, and then you pass and it turns out it just seemed like you were just trying to get a meeting with the CEO, then that might make them feel burned and they might not want to work with you. But in general, no, you can open the door, particularly if it's a door further down the hallway. I don't know, Min, what's your experience been with this one?
Well, it also depends a little bit on kind of the savviness of whoever is recruiting you and really selling to you too. And so there's this delicate dance that you're playing as the candidate and as the recruiter or the hiring manager, and being open about what are kind of your non-negotiables almost, and why. It kind of goes back to yesterday, I think, or an earlier episode of explaining why you may or may not be saying yes or no to something.
Yes.
And so if you're saying no to a potential offer and you have a clear reason for doing so, I think that at least kind of provides some closure and explanation for why it might not have been the best mutual fit.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to lay out your reasons in a way where, regardless of the decision you make, you're going to be honest to your reasons. So if you're interviewing at Google and they say, well, what kind of company you want to work for? And you say, well, I really want to work for a place. By the way, my phone just, how can I help? As soon as I said Google, that's funny. I'm an Android. And you say well, I'd really like to be at a company that started out as a search engine, but has now expanded into blah, blah, blah. And then you end up going to right. Amazon, Facebook. It's oh, well, that person's just phony. And that's the kind of thing that, companies do keep records on these things. And if you're phony, they shouldn't want to hire you because they learned something in the process that may make them not want to work with you.
Yeah. But alternatively, if you had been saying from the get-go, maybe that you were interested in working on a small team on a new thing or something, and the offer doesn't quite reflect that opportunity that you were really looking for.
Or even if you said, what I'm really solving for is a chance to have as much management responsibility as possible, and they were giving you some, but somebody else gave you more, it can be a judgment call. Or, I want to work at a place that meets these criteria, and ultimately I'm going to decide based on the chemistry of, who that I have with the team, something like that, narrating something honestly. And sometimes that's hard because you don't quite know. And even, by the way, saying, I don't know, is okay. Hey, I'm using this process to actually figure out what I want. That's an okay thing to say too, if it's honest
Yeah. And I think if for anyone who's listening who might be on like the hiring side, it's such a great opportunity to collect feedback about what you may or may not be able to offer. And especially, I'm imagining if there was like a culture feedback for why it might not have worked out, it's like a great learning opportunity to say, oh yeah, if you're saying there's no one like me on this team, right? And like, how do you solve for that?
100%. I love that.
Yeah, so we'll be back tomorrow for another one of your questions. If you have one that you would like to ask us, and about startups, about the future of work, anything like that, let us know, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, and remember, this is not advice, because advice is somebody telling you usually telling you how you should live the way they lived. Like they're talking about their life or their business. We're just giving you our perspective on how things work. All right, man, to be continued. Thank you.
Bye.